When I passed away during the third year of the zombie apocalypse, life became brutally challenging. Resources were tight and supplies were hard to come by. My fiance, Ethan, and my closest buddy, Mia, betrayed me by pushing me into a swarm of zombies, all just for a busted can of food. Out of nowhere, I snapped back to life. I glanced at my phone, and it revealed we were a month away from the zombie outbreak. Living solo, my parents had left me a spacious villa in the suburbs, although I typically stayed in the university dorms. On the day the zombies went berserk, Ethan and Mia were at my villa. Naturally, I was a hoarder with a touch of OCD. Every shopping spree, if the deal was good, I'd buy in bulk by the case. In the cellar of my villa, there were 20 bags of 100 pounds of rice each, 20 bags of 100 pounds of flour each, 100 barrels of 20 pounds of olive oil, and heaps of purified water. I had 4 or 5 massive freezers in the basement, fully stocked with 200 pounds of pork, 200 pounds of lamb, 200 pounds of beef, and all sorts of frozen goodies. There were endless ready-to-eat meals and snacks, including countless boxes of instant noodles in every flavor imaginable. Honestly, if the food didn't spoil, I'd probably never finish it all. Non-perishable household items like tissues, blankets, clothes, and toiletries filled an entire 215-square-foot storage room. Seeing my stash, Ethan and Mia were ecstatic. Ethan especially couldn't stop praising my foresight. With all these supplies, the three of us stayed put in the villa until the third year, when things started to fall apart, forcing us to venture out in search of more food. Before I died, I discovered that Ethan was only with me for the house and had been cheating on me with Mia. After resurrecting, to avoid any complications, I immediately got fake IDs and a critical illness notice to take a break from school. Seeing me on the verge of death, the teacher came to help me with my leave of absence, almost tearing up and nearly bowing right there. Not really needed, though. Once the leave was sorted, I blocked everyone's contact. Following the typical campus legend, rumors of my death would probably spread within 3 days. Perfect. Just let me fade away like a fart. Given a second chance, I didn't want any ties with anyone. Leaving school, I pulled out all the savings my parents left me and quickly hired workers to fortify my villa. The perimeter was raised by 2 meters and fenced with barbed wire, topped with live wires and sharp spikes. The main gate's security grills were triple reinforced. No ordinary saw could cut through them. I even had workers dig a deep trench around the villa so zombies would fall in if they approached. The interior needed reinforcement too. The basement was metal-plated to make it airtight. I added solar panels to the roof and dragged 2 generators from nearby factories to handle future power outages. The villa's garden was cleared for farming, and I bought seeds and planting books. After the apocalypse, water became incredibly scarce. I used every spare room for water storage. What used to be Ethan and Mia's rooms were now storage spaces. After completing basic remodeling, it was time for massive shopping sprees. I liquidated everything and maxed out loans. Thanks to payday loans, I managed to gather a cool $500,000. Conveniently, the largest shopping festival launched 3 days after my rebirth. During those 3 days, while the workers fortified the villa, I shopped around the clock. Rice, flour, oil, spices, toiletries, emergency meds, fast food, snacks, anything I could think of went into my cart. I grabbed every discount voucher, missing none, determined to get the most bang for my buck. Soon the festival kicked off at midnight. Using my 20 years of single-life quick hands, I sped through checkout, snagging plenty of freebies and hitting jackpots thanks to the hefty amount I spent. Thanks to the shopping fest, I grabbed nearly $1 million worth of supplies with just $400,000. Satisfied beyond belief, I finally crashed. The days after were swamped with delivery arrivals. I meticulously sorted every package into each storage room of the villa. To fit more stuff, I stripped away packaging whenever possible, and I didn't toss those boxes. I stacked them in the open yard. Cardboards have tons of uses, from sleeping mats to kindling. During the house revamp and while waiting for deliveries, I scoured flea markets, grabbing things that seemed useless to others. Fishing lines, fire starters, matches, climbing ropes, drones, camo gear, pro jackets, hiking boots. New ones cost a fortune, but some secondhand ones were practically brand new and dirt cheap. I didn't care if they were new or used as long as they worked. With the remodel complete, I ventured out. I needed to buy some stuff that wasn't available online, like weapons, though I'd already bought baseball bats and kitchen knives. I worried that frequent purchases might alert online patrol units. I didn't want to waste precious time dealing with cops or explaining why I was stocking up so much. In my country, getting weapons wasn't easy. I put in a lot of effort, squeezing into back alleys. Finally, I stumbled upon a black market. Weapons were pricey, and the 100 grand I had wouldn't buy much. Plus, the black market boss made me uneasy. He was ruggedly handsome, exuding masculinity, and his mere gaze made my legs shaky. I hurriedly bought 2 guns and 5 rounds of ammo, along with 2 knives, ready to leave. But just as I was about to go, he said, "Wait, give her 2 more grenades." Holding 2 grenades confused, I saw the man with a cigarette suddenly smirk. "Little girl, what do you need these for?" I just lowered my head and stayed silent. He asked again, "Do you know how to use them?" I whispered, "I've seen others use them." He chuckled. "All right." I was thrilled to get the weapons, but when I returned to the villa, I saw someone I really didn't want to see. Ethan and Mia were at my villa's door, and I saw him trying to pry it open with a crowbar. I nearly exploded with anger. That door cost me $100,000 to install. The zombies hadn't even arrived yet, but if they dared to break in, I'd shoot them on the spot. Having a gun made me feel so much more confident. Catching them red-handed trying to break in, they were awkward for a moment, but then Ethan urgently accused me. "Sarah, I heard from the advisor that you've got terminal brain cancer. Why didn't you tell me?" Mia added, "Yeah, Sarah, I heard from the advisor that you've got terminal brain cancer." "Why didn't you tell me?" Mia repeated. "Yeah, Sarah, why did you block Ethan and me? Do you know how worried we were?" They acted all high and mighty, as if they had some moral high ground. Aren't I supposed to have brain cancer? If it wasn't for cancer messing up my brain, how could I have taken care of these 2 betrayers for 3 years in my past life? They were so anxious now. Do they really think I can't see the excitement in their eyes? I didn't have any heirs, so if I died, they thought they could take over my villa. Too bad for them, the apocalypse was less than a week away, and I was racing against time. I had no time for them and went to get inside. Then I heard Ethan's strange voice behind me. "Sarah, why did you set up your house like this?" My heart skipped a beat, maybe to avoid getting hacked up if I couldn't pay back loan sharks. A cold voice whispered in my ear, making my heart nearly stop. It was that crime boss, Marcus. "It's that little girl, indeed, borrowed our money, then vanished." A younger guy beside him pointed at me and shouted, "Sarah, debtor number 001, borrowed $50K from Cash Loot. Interests 10%. Today's the due date." Not bad, little girl, using my money to buy weapons from me. "Pay up, Marcus." Cigarette dangling. Waved the ledger, demanding payment. I'd swear I never borrowed such a ruthless loan. But I suspected he was bluffing, so I stayed quiet. With the zombie outbreak just days away, I was only missing the livestock ordered and the water filtration system. I calculated, feeling a bit down. Funds were tight. I didn't even have $500, let alone $5,000. I pulled out a grenade. "Hey, man, will this work?" He glanced at the grenade. "Using what I gave you as payment?" "Sarah, you got guts." I shrugged modestly. "Not bad. Who else did you borrow from?" "Can't recall." He chuckled again. "You're something else." In the end, he got no money from me. Surprisingly, he left me 2 big cans of red paint, saying it was too heavy to bother taking. His sidekick whispered that these were their go-to tools for collecting debts. They'd never seen a place like my fortress-style villa. It didn't even need their paint to look any worse. I glanced at my postmodern English-style digs and scoffed, like him, like they'd understand. I happily loaded the paint onto a cart and brought it inside. "That stuff's gold. The smell can mask our scent from zombies. A lucky break." The crime boss showed up again to collect, but this time he came alone. He arrived as I was digging trenches in front of the villa. Standing against the light, his expression was unreadable, while I was a dusty mess in the trench. Seeing he had no intention of burying me alive, I continued laying fishing lines and making ropes in the trench, determined that no zombie would get past. He watched for a bit, then left. What a peculiar guy. With 3 days left until the zombie outbreak, I was in the final stretch of prep. All my chickens, ducks, and piglets were in their pens, and the fish, shrimp, and crabs were in the backyard ponds I'd dug. My custom water filtration and distillation system were up and running to secure my water supply post-apocalypse. Due to the sheer volume of online orders, there were some return issues, so I had to get some refunds. This left me with a bit of extra cash, and between credit cards and certain limits, I was set for one last shopping trip right before time ran out. According to my plan, I'd spend most of the first 3 years of the apocalypse in the villa. For entertainment, I filled all my TVs, computers, tablets, Switch, and PS5 with novels, shows, movies, and games. In town, I grabbed up old manga and magazines treated like scrap and weighed by the pound, hauled a truckload back to stack in the warehouse, converting waste to warmth. With all this, I could really keep myself busy during my solo time in the apocalypse. Last time, I was always the one going out to get food while Mia and Ethan had excuses. One was scared, the other wanted to protect supplies, refusing to leave. This time, I wouldn't be the good-hearted fool again. First, I used my dad's old business truck to haul dozens of barrels of diesel. It was pretty tough to get, but it was for my 2 vehicles, a small truck, and an off-roader. Next, I drove the truck to the city's biggest supermarket. I did the math. With the cash I had and a new bank card, I could spend up to $200,000. I planned to blow it all. I disguised myself as a small grocery owner, stocking up, double-checking my supplies. This time, I focused on perishables, green veggies. I planned to refrigerate half and turn the other half into pickles. Whatever spoiled could feed my chickens, ducks, and geese. The supermarket manager was thrilled with a customer helping his KPIs. He even assigned a big guy to help me load the stuff. But the moment I saw the guy, I fell silent for a second. My legs started shaking again with that familiar sensation. No way, it's the mob boss again. This was no ordinary helper. The manager practically handed me a big shot. He glared at me with a warning, as if saying, "Say anything and you're dead." Yet the mob boss actually helped me move stuff, wearing a supermarket uniform. He looked like an innocent young guy rather than a tough gangster. I heard the manager call him Marcus. Watching this big mob boss actually load stuff for me, with those perfect arm and neck muscles flexing, was dizzying. "Did your loan shark business finally close down?" There I went, running my mouth. He shot me a side eye. "Even if it did, you still owe me." Yeah, I nodded nonchalantly. After all, the apocalypse would hit in 2 days. $50K would soon be worth less than a bag of rice, and rice I've got plenty. Maybe my attitude wasn't humble enough. Marcus suddenly stopped and asked, "You got brain cancer?" I hesitated. If I said yes, I'd be like a dying scammer taking his money and more. Finally, I said, "Nah, I'm just fooling them." Marcus's expression was unreadable. "Why?" I replied quietly. "They did me wrong." Marcus nodded aggressively. "Good, if you don't pay, I'll kill you." Is this guy allergic to romance? Even in this tense mood, he still remembered that with almost everything loaded, I was ready to leave. He suddenly asked, "Sarah, if you met the people who hurt you before, what would you do?" I thought seriously. "If you're bitten by a dog, you don't bite back." I'd live my life as planned, but if they try again, I'd strike first. Marcus smiled softly, a smile that reminded me of my high school crush, pure, clear, dazzling me until he noticed my stare, and I quickly looked away. Before we parted, Marcus said, "Little liar, stay in after this trip." I cocked my head in confusion. Right then, news flashed on the supermarket television. A new virus is spreading in the city. Citizens, wear masks outside. Avoid crowded places. I turned sharply to Marcus. He looked back with an unreadable expression, mouthing silently, "Leave." Panicked, I rushed home, thinking I had everything planned perfectly. But I forgot one thing. The apocalypse might not be instant. In dense university towns and city centers, there were probably early signs. Back home, I fired up my generator, activated high voltage around the villa, and pulled in the wooden planks over the trench. With mixed emotions, I lay in bed. I dreamed of Marcus, his mysterious gaze flashing through my mind over and over. I didn't sleep well that night. With 2 days until the zombie outbreak, I dared not go out. I started noting my final yields and planned out a 10-year survival strategy with my current supplies. Only disciplined and frugal resource use could keep me alive in an apocalypse. I'd always kept a journal, so it wasn't too hard for me. Most food would spoil in a year or two. Freezing slows this. Thank goodness for preservatives. Things like instant noodles, canned goods, and compressed biscuits would last years. But after 5 years, livestock and fish farming had to become my main food sources. Luckily, I helped my grandma with chickens and ducks as a kid and harvested crops like wheat and corn. With limited space, the villa garden couldn't fit a greenhouse. So I crafted a simple one myself. After recording everything, I headed to the kitchen to pickle the mountain of veggies I bought yesterday. Seeing the kitchen packed with vegetables, Marcus's image popped into my head. I shook it off. Stop it, Sarah. This might be the last time you ever see him. In a world where life was so cheap, everyone barely hung on to survive. I just wanted to lay low in my villa. And Marcus, since the first time I saw him, I knew he was destined to expand his territory. We were from two completely different worlds. I stored the pickled veggies in the villa's cellar. After a day of hard work, I treated myself generously. Even though I hoarded a ton of supplies, I just couldn't resist a little indulgence. For dinner, I had braised prawns and rib soup. They tasted amazing. Even though it had been 3 years since the apocalypse with no place to use my skills, I hadn't lost my touch. Those apocalyptic experiences made me cherish food a lot. I finished up 2 bowls of rice, along with all the dishes. After dinner, I started binge-watching a show. Looking at the incomplete show under my fingers, I felt a bit bummed. If they don't release early access, this show's gonna get buried. There's such a big difference between the male and female leads' identities. Are they ever gonna end up together? Dang it, dying to know. Just when the plot was heating up, there was a bunch of shouting outside the door. Sarah, open up! Sarah, something happened. Let us in quick. It was Ethan and Mia. My face dropped immediately, filled with annoyance. When I stepped out of the room, I took the gun I got from Marcus. I had made the whole villa completely secure, standing in front of the door with only a wall separating us. Hearing me unlock the door, Ethan and Mia got super excited. They yelled, Sarah, open up! I stayed silent. Mia said, Sarah, there are zombies in the university town, just like in the movies. We barely escaped. Let us in first. Ethan added, yeah? Sarah, it's too dangerous for a girl to live alone in the suburbs. Let us in. I'll protect you. Ha. I couldn't help but let out a sarcastic laugh. Protect me? How shameless can you get to even say that? Their yelling got even more intense after hearing my voice. Ethan's voice came from the other side of the door. Sarah, why won't you let us in? How can you just watch us die? Did you find out something? And why did your villa suddenly turn into this? Through the thick door, I could hear the gloom and resentment in his tone. Marcus's question flashed in my mind. Before, I was worried about being watched by the cops. But now, I thought it was time. The door I ordered had 3 layers. The outermost was a stainless steel security gate. The second was an electrified wire mesh. And the innermost was the actual door. I suddenly opened the door, catching Ethan and Mia off guard with their scheming looks still on their faces. They had a lot of wounds from my traps, to which I was quite pleased. When they saw me, they froze for a moment, immediately switching to flattering smiles. I smiled back, then raised the gun in my hand. Bang! I didn't even pull the trigger, just made a sound, and Ethan and Mia were terrified. Ethan even screamed and hid behind Mia. Seeing how cowardly they were, I suddenly lost interest. Am I really gonna kill these scums and taint my hands? I decided to make peace with myself. Guess I'll be the saint. Ignoring their horrified faces, I closed the door and walked away. That night, I slept exceptionally well, though half asleep. I might have heard some noise during the night, but when I checked the next day, there was nothing there. Today was the day when the zombie outbreak truly went global, like last time. I sat in front of the TV all day, watching one channel after another. Some switched to news broadcasts, others to static. The world changed in the blink of an eye. That evening, I tried to continue the show I was watching yesterday, but sure enough, there were no new episodes. At that moment, I felt both a sense of relief and a tinge of regret. My life of solitary survival had officially begun in this place. My villa was pretty isolated. In my last life, zombies rarely showed up here. Now, with my preparations, I hadn't even seen a single zombie yet. Still, sometimes passing cars made my nerves suddenly tense up. In the apocalypse, twisted human nature could be scarier than zombies. I realized the batch of chickens and ducks I bought before had some issues. Seeing 4 or 5 chicks and ducklings not growing much while eating the same amount, I fell silent. Maybe I should eat them. After all, eating without growing wasn't great. What kind of household can handle that kind of eating? Considering the value of livestock, I cautiously searched online. Early in the apocalypse, many websites were abandoned, but some were still up. After searching, I discovered that my batch of broiler chicks and ducks had 2 roulades quail and 2 call ducks mixed in. I wondered, were they accidentally caught while eloping? That evening, as I was about to deal with those little freeloaders, they each laid an egg. Hesitating for a moment, noticing nature's wonder and the animal's will to live, I put down the knife and brought out my incubator. I got hooked on incubating eggs, checking on those 2 eggs every morning as soon as I woke up. A week later, I placed them under light to check. Seeing the little hearts beating and veins spreading inside made my eyes a bit teary. In an apocalypse, new life always brought joy. In the following days, I played the role of a diligent chicken mama. The incubation times and environments for roulades quail and call ducks were different. Roulades quail needed 16 days, while call ducks took 26 days, requiring higher humidity. Every day, I documented the state of those 2 eggs. 2 weeks flew by without me noticing. This morning, I went to check on the eggs as usual. The roulades quail's egg was close to hatching but still showed no movement. Worried it might suffocate, I carefully made a small hole with tweezers on its shell. I spent the whole day by its side, even forgetting to eat. When I saw the tiny beak of the quail through the hole I made, I couldn't help but cry tears of joy. The little quail chick was born, and I named it Emergency Rations Number 1. I brought its mom over to see it, but she was too love-struck to care about the baby. She looked at it briefly, paid the egg protection fee with another egg, and flapped her wings away. I glanced at Emergency Rations Number 1 in my hand and the warm egg, thinking grudgingly, "Today I'm raiding your nest." But eventually, I marked the new egg and put it in the incubator. After checking on the not-yet-hatched call ducks, I went to water my garden full of fruits and veggies. Halfway through, I suddenly heard zombie noises outside. I perked up immediately. A real moving zombie. This could be the first zombie I see in this post-apocalyptic life. It was oddly thrilling. I opened the inner door and felt a strange affection seeing the stumbling, one-armed, one-legged zombie outside. I'd been alone too long, if a zombie seemed charming. But once the novelty wore off, I went inside to grab my big machete. The weird thing was, by the time I got back, the zombie was nowhere to be found. I was puzzled. Did it wander off somewhere else? I looked around cautiously, but didn't see that familiar figure again, leaving me disappointed as I put the machete away. Though tempted, I clearly preferred this laid-back life. The quail chick grew fast and could walk and eat on its own in less than a week. She was a girl, and she loved to run around the house, leaving little poops as her mark. So tiny, so cute, but really a handful. When the call ducks hatched, their hatching was much tougher than the quail. Luckily, I had some experience by now, and despite the anxiety, I successfully got myself a big son with 0 blood relation, not even the same species. Lately, I'd been facing a realistic dilemma. I sat in my vegetable garden with a serious face, staring at the groups of troublemakers. It had been almost 2 months since Emergency Rations Number 1. One was born, and quails mature in just a month and a half. With the daily contributions from the original quail, I probably had around 30 quails, and soon they'd be adding 1 egg a day to the flock. Okay. I forced myself to stop this terrifying math. Just as I was stressing about what to do with all the chicks I'd hatched, I suddenly heard outside, "Hello, cash loan, here to collect? Detta no. 001. When are you planning to pay back?" I whipped my head around, suppressing my surprise, and asked, "Who?" The person outside seemed impatient, and I pictured him smirking with a cigarette. "Your creditor." I opened the small window on the door and saw him through the wire mesh. Maybe my wide-eyed disbelief looked too silly, so he chuckled a bit. Dazed by his smile, my expression became even sillier. Marcus pulled out his ledger. "Deaton 0001, Sarah. 3 terms overdue. Compounded interest makes it $200,000 this term." Seeing my complicated expression, he raised an eyebrow. "Is there a problem?" I said. "I might seem a bit dumb to you, but I'm not blind." Brazenly showing me the empty ledger, Marcus sneered. "So you're not paying?" I nodded sincerely. "I don't have money. Right then, a quail chick stepped on my foot and left a poop on my shoe. Emboldened, I grabbed the chick and passed it through the window to Marcus. As my hand nearly touched the high-voltage wire, he frowned. Wait, it was the first time I'd heard Marcus raise his voice, scaring me a bit, making my legs tremble. Seeing me about to extend my hand again, he pursed his lips. When I opened my palm and revealed the quail, his eyebrows furrowed even more, thinking he was dissatisfied with my offering. I tried to convince him, "This kind of quail, don't underestimate her. She reproduces quickly, can fill a cage in a month and a half, and they taste just like regular chicken. Really delicious." Marcus and the quail in my hand had a little staring match, and he still didn't seem too happy. I decided to grab more, hoping quantity would win. Through the door, I handed him the quails one by one, urging, "Take them," like a fussing mother hen. After a brief silence, Marcus accepted the chicks. When our fingers touched, it felt like a spark. Later, when the chicks were too many for Marcus to hold, he stuffed them in his pockets. When Marcus left, I saw emergency rations number 1 peeking out from his pocket, as if asking if my conscience hurt. Before leaving, Marcus said, "These are just the interest." After dealing with Marcus, I sighed in relief. I was actually quite happy to solve the quail overflow problem this way. Today was the new year. The apple tree I planted in the backyard was finally ready to harvest. Hearing the familiar cocky voice outside, I glanced through the peephole and opened the door. Seeing my look, Marcus paused for a second. "What are you doing?" he asked, unsure. I looked at my floral jacket, touched my green headscarf, hands covered in dirt. "I'm picking apples," I said. He seemed skeptical. "I'm here to collect again." Marcus nodded. I smiled. What a coincidence. I handed him a bag of apples. "Take these as payment, apples for peace, wishing you well." He took the apples and before leaving, he said, "Happy New Year." I froze for a moment and softly replied, "Happy New Year." After my parents passed away, I got used to spending New Year's alone. Resources were scarce in this doomsday world, so I didn't splurge. I made a few nice dishes. I took out the sausages I made with my sausage stuffer. They'd been drying for a while and tasted pretty good. Maybe I could use them to pay off Marcus next time he came by. I suddenly realized Marcus was unusually easy to fool today. Just a few apples, and he was okay. Hope he stays this way. Amen. At night, I took out an old book I found before the apocalypse and read it with interest. I lit a lamp, wrote down some notes, and went to sleep early. That night, I had a good dream. In it, my late parents were there, and there were no zombies. Time flew by, and before I knew it, it was April. Recently, I noticed tadpoles in my pond. When I found them, they already had little legs. Now, let's discuss a highly debated topic from a cosmic perspective. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? There were no frogs in my pond. So where did these tadpoles come from? Worried they'd get eaten by fish, I set up a separate area for them. I was happily waiting for my tadpoles to grow into bullfrogs, and then maybe into some spicy bullfrog stew, until Marcus showed up again. When I mentioned I might have bullfrogs next time, he paused a second, then looked at me with a peculiar expression. "Sarah, you know tadpoles in March and April turn into toads?" I was shocked and slowly widened my eyes. Angry, I slammed the door shut, blocking out Marcus's obnoxious laughter, and refused to pay him this time. If I can't enjoy bullfrogs, neither can you. Nobody wins. I checked with the only site that still worked, and sure enough, early spring tadpoles were toads. Frogs only appeared in May. In winter, toads dug into the mud to hibernate. Some must have gotten into my pond at the start of the apocalypse. Frustrated, I had to scoop all the tadpoles out. Even though toads were good for crops, they looked too dreadful for me. Just as I was pondering how to dispose of them, I heard a voice outside. "Just gather them up for me. Consider it a discount for the interest you owe." It was Marcus. He hadn't left yet. When I handed him the bag, I curiously asked, "What are you going to do with these tadpoles?" He grinned. "Raise them to eat swan meat." He always looked good, and when he smiled, even better. I suddenly found myself looking forward to his next visit. Recently, I'd noticed more zombies around. It was odd. In my past life, they didn't show up in such numbers before the 3rd year. If they were showing up more here in the middle of nowhere, I wondered what it was like in the cities. I used binoculars to scout the area, made sure everything was clear, and armed with my machete, I swiftly took out the zombies near my villa. This wasn't hard for me. After my parents passed, I took up kickboxing. Not to brag, but in our community, at 52 kilograms, I was pretty unbeatable. When Marcus arrived, he caught me chopping the last zombie like cutting vegetables, lobbing off half its brain. The head hit the ground and oddly bounced a couple of times, spilling brain matter everywhere. Both Marcus and I found our eyes glued to it, nodding slightly in sync with each bounce. Noticing Marcus's gaze, I gave an embarrassed smile as the machete in my hand dripped some unknown liquid. The air felt a bit awkward, yet comical. Marcus watched me go inside, and I hesitated about inviting him in, but I held back. The times didn't allow for it, and he seemed unimpressed by my fortress anyway. We'd reached some kind of understanding. He visited now and then, and I prepared supplies in advance. This time, I got a basket of potatoes ready. It was June, which meant potato season. To my surprise, he didn't take them. I stared at him in disbelief, wondering if he'd gone crazy. "This is the apocalypse!" And him turning down potatoes? What kind of wild ego boost did he get? But all he said was, "Sarah, don't venture out anymore. Leave the zombies, they'll be dealt with." I blinked in confusion. Someone's handling it, like the property management will bring in a forklift for them. Marcus gave me a look that made me feel like a lost cause. As he left, his words left me uneasily anxious. I felt restless, suddenly frustrated that I didn't say anything to him as he left. Back at the villa, I wandered through each room, counting my supplies over and over, like it was the only way to feel somewhat secure. Days passed, and Marcus's visits grew more sporadic. Sometimes I had to replace the supplies I prepared. The weight risked them rotting. 3 months went by, and he never showed. I returned to my original solitary life, no longer worrying about supplies. My crops and veggies steadily matured, finally yielding a surplus. I felt like an energetic squirrel, stashing these surplus foods for the coming second winter of the apocalypse. Living alone was incredibly lonely, and despite the scarce resources, I adopted a pet. It was a cool duck, the first one I hatched, named Milo. Every morning, Milo pecked me awake by the bed. His little beady eyes looked just like yours when reminding me about deadlines. The call ducks didn't eat much. Once they were adults, they ate 3 meals a day. Besides their special duck feed, I also tossed in some wilted veggie scraps for them. Milo wasn't picky. He was basically a trash can. I was pretty happy about how well he understood the situation. Right before winter officially hit, Marcus showed up again. At that time, I was busy gathering radishes, staring at each big, juicy radish. My mind was already picturing all the dishes and pickles I'd make. Even before he made a sound at the door, it was like I had some sixth sense, and I rushed to open it. When I saw Marcus, he looked thinner and darker, with an intense aura and the smell of blood clinging to him. He seemed exhausted. I cautiously asked, "Are you here to collect debts?" He shook his head. "I just came to see you." In that moment, my heart felt like it was going to leap out of my chest. When he saw my eyes widen, he gave a faint half smile. Just when he was about to turn and leave, I blurted, "Marcus, do you want to come in for a bit?" He glanced back at me, frowning. "Sarah, haven't you learned your lesson?" His sudden stern tone stung a bit and made me feel upset. Marcus left, and I had a feeling this time he wasn't coming back. Winter arrived again. In winter, there weren't many leafy greens to eat. Cabbage, spinach, and radishes were among the few that could handle the cold. The piglets I bought before the apocalypse grew up and had 2 litters. Once they started breeding, it got a bit out of control, and my garden became crowded. The smell was overwhelming, constantly buzzing in my head. Eventually, with limited space in mind, I decided the pigs had to go. Slaughtering a pig on my own wasn't easy. I'd fattened the boar myself, and after tying it up, I had to step on its head. With a swift cut, I ended its life. I divided the whole pig into parts, washed and stored them separately. It wasn't an easy task. A boar around a year old weighed between 400 and 500 kilos. Forget the meat, the organs alone were over 50 pounds. They smelled strong enough to make even zombies shake their heads. It took me 2 full days to process the entire pig. When everything was done, I realized I'd instinctively set aside a portion. Looking at the 50 pounds of meat and organs I'd saved separately, I paused for a moment. Then, I placed them in a separate spot in the freezer. As the new year approached, I picked a perfect-looking cut of meat to make barbecue. I used the rest of the good meat to make dumplings. I made the dough and rolled the wrappers myself, each dumpling looking like a little treasure, tempting and cute. During New Year, you couldn't miss out on fried goodies. I loved fried eggplant, lotus root, and little crispy pork pieces. I took out the eggplants I'd grown that summer from the freezer. I was a bit reluctant when it came to the lotus root. Plants like lotus root were too challenging for me to grow, reducing bit by bit with each bite. After all the prep was done, looking back at the preparations, I realized I'd done a bit more compared to last year. As the zombies roared outside the villa, the new year quietly came upon us. Even while alone in the villa, I could sense that this world's zombie outbreak seemed worse than before. I didn't know what was happening outside, but I hoped the zombie hordes wouldn't threaten my villa. Besides hoping, there was nothing else I could do. This new year felt void of any joy due to the turmoil around. I ended up eating the New Year's Eve dinner alone, cleaning up the leftovers. Like last year, I opened a new book, but by the time night fell, it was still on the first page. Suddenly, a familiar rumbling noise came from outside, causing me to drop the book and run out with overdue joy. But just as I stepped outside, I stopped in my tracks. I furrowed my brows, turned back to grab binoculars, and looked out to see someone who wasn't Marcus. I immediately activated the villa's high-voltage electric gate to save energy. I hadn't turned on the lights, so I watched the person from the shadows with my binoculars. The person seemed familiar. He was the guy who helped Marcus collect debts before, the same guy who had struggled to unload those 2 buckets of red paint. When he got out of the car, I loaded my gun. Surprisingly, after getting out, instead of approaching the villa, he raised his hands high. In his open palm was a sleek little chick, carrying itself like royalty, looking around with tiny eyes full of disdain for the foolish humans nearby. Considering there might not be another person in this world who'd raise such peculiar things as quails in the apocalypse, I opened the door. Facing each other through the high-voltage wire fence, the guy looked at me with a sheepish smile. He said his name was Enzo, a trusted aide of Marcus. Then he showed me a token Marcus had sent, a quail, an apple, a tomato, and a toad. Turns out Marcus really did manage to raise those tadpoles. After the show, he carefully placed the items back like treasures. I wondered why Marcus had sent Enzo, but Enzo's next move left me stunned. He took out the familiar ledger without words, the one always in Marcus's hand, and tore it into shreds in front of me, almost like severing the already thin connection between Marcus and me. Then he looked at me seriously and said, in Marcus's words, "Debtor 001, Sarah, your debts are all cleared. From now on, no ties." Without acknowledging my shocked expression, he turned to leave. Seeing him go, I forgot about the high voltage and tried to chase. Enzo turned back, startled. "Slow down." I was puzzled at how he knew the layout of my house. So last time, when I tried to hand something to Marcus, he reacted the same way. Suddenly, my mind was racing with a million thoughts. I asked, "Where's Marcus?" Enzo pursed his lips, looking heartbroken. "Marcus, he's gone." I was silent for a couple of seconds, my tone a bit complicated. "Do you think I'm dumb?" He seemed to mumble, "Not dumb, just clueless." I replied, saying each word slowly. "I don't believe you." Enzo clenched his teeth. "I'm telling the truth, Sarah. Marcus is gone. Stop waiting for him." He said it like he was being chased by a dog and was ready to run off. This might be a bit of a misunderstanding," I said. "I'm not waiting for him." Enzo stopped suddenly, looking back at me like I was some deceitful player. He looked furious, even though he was the one who started this. He angrily said, "Why aren't you waiting for him? Don't you realize with Marcus's status, he can have anyone he wants? Even those top-tier socialites and celebs are all over him. He's never even glanced at them. And who's responsible for that? You? I don't know what spell you've put on Marcus. All those silly gifts. Yeah, like that toad. Giving him a toad and his over the moon. He'd be happy for days with that ugly thing covered in warts." Saying that, Enzo pulled the toad out of the bag and held it in front of me. Meeting its gaze, I couldn't help but look away. Enzo got even angrier. "You don't even want to look at it. And Marcus thinks it's precious? Do you know how over at the base it is with those chickens? Marcus never lets us eat them. Someone once ate a few, and Marcus sentenced them to 7 days on the front line." I really didn't know how to respond. but it didn't stop the corners of my mouth from curling up. Seeing my reaction, Enzo seemed to feel a bit better. He straightened up and told me a lot of things before he left. Before he left, he looked at me seriously and said, "Sarah, sis-in-law. Let me call you sis-in-law. Could you wait for Marcus?" I learned a lot from Enzo. First, about Ethan and Mia. After I scared them with a gun that day, I never heard from them again. I thought they relocated to seek refuge somewhere, but actually, that very night, they died on the electric fence of my villa. The noise I vaguely heard in my dream that night was Marcus dealing with their bodies. Secondly, about the occasional sound of vehicles near my villa. Enzo said Marcus had people regularly clearing zombies around my villa. Not just zombies, but also anyone eyeing my villa would be dealt with secretly by Marcus's people. Also, I never borrowed money. Everything from the moment I stepped into that black market was part of Marcus's elaborate scheme. Suddenly, a lot of details I'd overlooked before started flashing in my mind. It was like someone was waiting for me at the black market, guiding me step by step. When I wanted diesel, I could conveniently find some. All the equipment I got from the seafood market was cheap and came from official channels. And back in the previous life, when I went out alone for food, there was always an unnoticed gaze watching me. I didn't know if all of this was connected, but I wanted to ask Marcus about it in person. This winter had been unbelievably cold and long. I used up triple the firewood and electricity as last year and added extra layers to my plants and poultry greenhouses. Yet my plants and livestock still suffered damage. Each morning, I'd find dead birds or vegetables, sometimes chicks, sometimes fish or cabbage. Even those that survived looked wilted. They huddled together, trying to stay warm. Looking at the lone plum blossom proudly standing in the garden, I silently wished for winter to pass. Fortunately, in May, the weather started to warm up. I discovered that the zombie numbers had significantly decreased after this long winter. In my previous life, when I died, the experts hadn't figured out the origin of zombies. But in 3 years of fighting them, people learned some things. Cold and darkness slowed them down, and cold made their sense of smell dull. It was speculated that a severe, long winter could cause zombies to die out, leaving the virus buried forever under endless snow. People hoped for a spring revival. I was kind of looking forward to what I didn't get to see last time happening in this life. The harsh winter took a toll on my garden, which I'd been tending for over a year. Thankfully, I stocked up on a lot of seeds. After clearing the frozen roots and before summer arrived, I started planting anew. It was tough work. It took me 4 days straight to finish because the seasons were all messed up. I relied only on experience to plant the seeds at the right time. After planting, time seemed to slow down again. I brought out a lounge chair to the yard, reading a book and quietly waiting for the new sprouts. Recently, I'd been hearing these loud explosions coming from downtown for days on end. I was too far from the action to see anything, even after trying repeatedly with binoculars. All the buildings just blocked my view. While tidying up my warehouse, I stumbled across an old drone I once grabbed from a seafood market ages ago. I thought I'd give it a shot, but it wouldn't fly since its battery was dead. After rummaging through some boxes, I found the charger. I held my breath and was a bit anxious during the charging process. When it was finally fully charged and functioning, I couldn't help but grin. I'm terrible with technology and gadgets. I remembered when I got my driver's license, and the instructor gave me this heartfelt advice. "Sarah, once you get that license, lock it away in a safe. For the sake of humanity, never take it out." When I first got the drone off the ground, it was all shaky, wobbly, and unsure. It did a few spins, jumps, dives, and loops, even managing to clip the head off an unsuspecting zombie before it finally flew straight. The drone's max range was about 7 kilometers, which still wasn't enough to get to the city center from my villa. But through the drone's camera, I discovered that the loud explosions were humans fighting off zombies. Wherever the drone could reach, zombies were almost all gone. The real action was right at the city center, where the most zombies were holed up. This victory seemed to be waving at humanity. Retrieving the drone, I was so excited that I couldn't calm down for ages. Then, one morning a week later, a loud commotion from downtown woke me up. If I could hear it all the way at my place, imagine the scene at the city center. I had a strong hunch that this apocalypse was over. Well, at least in my city, it was over. In that instant, my eyes welled up. Along with the relief, I felt a weird sense of confusion. I spent the whole day alone in my garden, lost in thoughts that even Milo, my usually carefree pet, picked up on. He came over curiously to nudge me with his nose. I pushed him away and said very seriously, "Don't bother me." Seeing me so serious, Milo jumped into my lap, basking in the sun with me. As we soaked up the rays, I started to get sleepy. In the haze of almost falling asleep, I thought I heard a familiar lazy voice, slightly arrogant, "Open up!" Jerked awake, I saw Milo fall off me with a surprised squawk. I turned my head to stare at the door, almost burning holes through it. I couldn't tell if it was real or just a dream, so I strained my neck to listen. But this time, there was nothing. I chuckled to myself, thinking, "Sarah, you're acting like some forlorn damsel." Marcus was right. I didn't love Ethan. I only entertained his advances because the loneliness was overwhelming, craving that familial warmth. I knew he was messing around with Mia. I wasn't mad. I was almost relieved that I had a reason to reject his advances. Not sure why I slipped into this gloomy mood, even beneath my thick haze. Milo seemed bewildered. He squawked, as if to say, "Sarah, are you expecting your duck son to open the door for you?" I jumped to my feet and flung the door open. Seeing who stood outside, separated by the wire mesh, I stayed silent. Seeing my stubborn face, Marcus laughed. "Sarah, wow. Haven't seen you for a bit, and you've packed on some pounds. What kind of remark is that, Marcus?" "Eating well is a blessing. Besides, fairy business is none of your concern." Marcus looked thinner, almost disappearing into himself. His hair was longer, and his stubble looked rough. Even from a distance, I could smell the smoke on him. He must have been part of the downtown raid, maybe returning straight from the front line. Is he here to share the victory news with me? After watching him for a bit, I couldn't hold back. "Marcus, how'd you manage to look so grungy?" He gave me this questioning look, like he was wondering why I had to open my big mouth. We stood there, awkward as ever, and I couldn't help but wiggle my toes. "All right, I'm off," he said. Suddenly I got mad. "Marcus, do you like me?" He hesitated, and before he could answer, I just went for it. "Whether you like me or not, I'm saying it now. I like you." He seemed stunned, maybe amused by my sudden outburst. It was the first time I truly understood the joy he felt watching me in a daze. After a beat, he came to and chuckled. "Sarah, shouldn't a guy say that kind of thing first? No one left in this world seems to matter to me anymore." I told him, "When a fairy wants something, she gets it." I kicked open the gate, and maybe deterred by my intensity, he stepped aside. Staring at him face to face, I said, "You're staying with me today." Then I grabbed his hand to pull him inside. He let me pull him a couple of steps forward, but just before we stepped through the door, he suddenly took my wrist in his hand. Surprised, I turned to look at him. He looked at me all serious and asked, "Sarah, I'm a grown woman. Do you know what your words mean to me?" I shot back, "Of course I know. Marcus, you walked the first 99 steps. Are you going to chicken out on the last one? Weren't you the one who made the first move?" Hearing that, Marcus cracked a mischievous grin. In an instant, he flipped the script and pulled me by the hand, leading me into the house with urgency. Inside, surrounded by the warmth of my place, we both seemed to come back to reality. Just standing there felt awkward. I tried to play it cool, saying, "There's hot water I filled up this morning. Why don't you grab a shower? I'll find my dad's old razor for you. Oh, and maybe get a haircut. Your hair's falling into your eyes." Marcus nodded, letting me fuss over him. Knowing my haircutting skills were iffy, I just gave him a buzz cut. In the mirror, I saw him sitting as I stood, his eyes never leaving me. His intense stare made my hand shaky as I touched his hair. I didn't have many men's clothes, so I picked a simple white t-shirt and some sweatpants for him. "You shower first. I'll whip up some food." I grabbed a fish and some shrimp from the pond, got some veggies from storage, and some pork from last night. I whipped up sweet and sour fish, boiled shrimp, tomato scrambled eggs, and cabbage rolls. I also caught 2 quails and made a pot of chicken soup. Halfway through, Marcus was already done showering. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him in the clothes I gave him, standing by the kitchen door, with arms crossed, head tilted, legs crossed, just watching me. I accidentally added an extra spoonful of salt. The rice cooked as I ladled out the soup, took out the boiled shrimp, and prepped the dipping sauce. In the bowl, I mixed green onion, garlic, 2 spoons of soy sauce, 1 spoon of steamed fish soy sauce, half a spoon of rice vinegar, and half a spoon of sesame oil. then poured hot oil over it and added chili peppers and green onions, stirring it well. I quietly said, "Dinner's ready." Marcus naturally came over, taking the dishes I had prepared. As I brought out 2 bowls of rice, he was there, waiting for me, looking like he'd finally found a piece of normal life. After dinner, Marcus told me a story. He said there was once a guy who grew up in the slums, working as a lackey and eventually becoming a small boss in the black market. Then, the apocalypse hit. He and the market boss set up a base. Life inside was chaos. People were alive but barely living. It was a place filled with violence, trade, and transactions. With life cheaper than dirt, women sold themselves for a loaf of bread, men sold their families, and friends betrayed each other for survival. It was suffocating. When things got heavy, this small boss would take a smoke break in the empty zones nearby while out gathering supplies. One day, this boss noticed a girl. She was always out alone, collecting stuff, moving fast with wary eyes. What was worth mentioning was her terrible driving. The boss often got anxious watching her. Eventually, he found out she lived with another guy and girl. She seemed like their caretaker, but while she was out, the other two were fooling around in the villa. The boss realized his interest in her went beyond just curiosity. In this chaotic world, a lowly guy like him didn't deserve romance. He caught feelings but pulled back. One day he was out for supplies, and his right eye was twitching all day. He had a bad feeling, thinking maybe it was his time. After all, you play with fire, you get burned. He was prepared, but then he saw that girl being pushed into a zombie horde, and he just lost it. The gun meant for zombies turned on those 2 backstabbers, and in a blink, the zombies swallowed him. Later I asked him, "Marcus, why didn't you come for me from the start?" He said, "Sarah, you need a country to have a home. In this life, I wanted to give you a home.